Well, I remember when I was a little girl, about 4 years old. That's the first thing I remember. I had a little brother. His name was Adam, and he died when I was 4 years old. And that I remember real well yet. They thought I was too young to remember that, but I know I did. Then when I was older, I got sick too. I had growth on my throat, and my father went and got the doctor, and he fixed it, and he put the teaspoon in my mouth, and that was a big thing that opened, and then I got well. And the neighbor ladies already came and sang for me. They thought I'd die. Well, and I grew older, and my father was a Sunday school or a school teacher, and he taught school in our house. We had a room there big enough for the school children, and he taught them, and I went to school there too. I was 7 years old then when I went to school, and my dad, he wanted me to learn, very quick and before others, because I was his daughter. Well, that was pretty hard for me to remember the reading so quick. We did it different there than here. First we learned the ABCs, and then we learned the words. We always spelled them before we pronounced the word. And we had reading, like a word there, we first spelled it. We didn't read it there. We just T-H-E-R-E, there. That's the way we learned to read. And then when I got older, we lived in a long house, and we had a dirt floor on Sunday. Mother would get a real nice yellow gravel and spread on the floor. That was for Sunday. So we got company sometimes. On Saturday evening, the young people came to our place to dance. And my dad, he played the harmonica, a big one, it goes this way. And we children had to sit on the bed so those that danced couldn't step on our feet. And when I was older, then Dad's parents were in America, and his brothers and sisters, and they wrote we should come too. So we got ready to go to America. Dad he had 2 farms, he both sold them. And then one night a Russian man opened the outside window, and he stepped in the house. He wanted to find that money. But my mother woke up, and then he ran away. So every evening there were some other people that went with us, like Grandpa and Grandma Wedel, and their mother's 2 sisters, Elizabeth and Agnes. We went then to America in a great big wagon with horses pulling the wagon. We went to where we had to walk through the border, and that border was all trees. And it was in April we went there, and there were so many leaves yet. And when we got there, my dad paid him to take us over the border. And we should walk we should lift our feet so the leaves wouldn't be too loud, because if they would hear that, they'd catch us and send us back. And did we get tired walking that was quite a ways through that border and all them leaves. And we were through. There was a train, so we got into the train, and we went to town there, and from there we went to Germany, where we came to a big building that was in the town Bremen, where we were to take a ship to go to America. But we first had to go on small ships because the big one couldn't come close to the water wasn't deep enough. So we got into the ship and we went a few days, and then the people there that worked there, they say we could see London, England, you know. So we all went to one side of the ship to look at London. But it was so foggy, we just seen mostly the light. Well, then we went further on, walked back to our rooms so the ship wouldn't fall over to one side. Then in a few days again, it was so very foggy, and the ships they stopped, didn't run, because another ship might come and run into our ship. So they locked every door. Nobody could get out of his room. They said if another ship runs into the ship, then we didn't get water in every room. No, we didn't get any water. Then we went on again several days and we met the icebergs. That was a real sight. It was just terrible, as high as you could look. And it was ice, little ways off, and such big pieces swam in the water. We could see them always go up and down. Well, that night the whistle was blowing all night, and every minute it was blowing. And my mother couldn't sleep because I guess she was so scared. She hadn't slept all night. My sister Susan, she was a year old, and she hadn't slept either because that big noise always had kept her from sleep. And she was so hungry sometimes, and mother didn't have anything to feed her anymore. And the nurse bought cream of wheat and a glass of milk, and they started to feed her that way. So often mother said, we'll have to throw Susan in the water because she is so hungry and she doesn't eat. Well, that nurse, she made her eat, and she got better then. She still is living. And then when we got here, we came to Baltimore, Maryland. That's where we had to walk on a long bridge from the ship to that building. And when we got there, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun was so hot. It was May, end of May. The sun was so hot, and the sun was so low, and we thought, my land, this is America. No, that's too hot here. But then we had to go before people there that tested our health and all that to let us go on further. So the next day we took a train and we went on to America then, we said. And when we came to Kentucky, there were onions fields as far as we could see from the train. All around we seen onion fields. And we wonder what in the world they could use so many onions for. Well, we went on, we came to Kansas City, and there we had to change the train to go to Hillsborough. And while we were on the train from Kansas City to Hillsborough, there was a man with a big beard in the train. He sat behind me and my sister, and we just wondered why in the world he smiled to us, and we got kind of scared. We told Dad that we should sit someplace else, and he said, no, you just sit there, he won't do anything to you. So when we came to Hillsborough, that man got out of the train too, and he came up to us and he got a hold of my father and said, I'm your brother Bam. You know, my father hadn't seen him for so many years. They already came to America in 1893, and we came in 1907. So all that time he hadn't seen his brothers or parents, but they lived near Hillsborough yet. So we stayed with Uncle Ben's for a few days, and Uncle Ben and Dad went out to find a place where we should live. And it didn't just took a day or two while they found the empty house. It belonged to John Dirkson's. They were our neighbors then, and we lived there then many years. Must I say? Well, my father, or my dad, had to work for the government 4 years, and he wasn't married yet. And during that time, his brothers and sisters and parents went to America. So when he came back, well, he learned to know Susie Wadle, and he was through the 1 year work, and he also learned how to teach a Sunday or a children class. So he started that. He was teaching for several years, for 2 years, I think. Then he married Mother, and he was still teaching a long time. I even went to school where he taught. I think I went 2 years there. Well, we just learned the German language. And then his father and mother and brothers, they always wrote letters that we should come too. My dad didn't want to go to America. He thought it was good enough there. He had 2 farms now already, and he had plenty of work to do, so he wanted to stay there. Because, you know, it got so bad that so many moved out, and then strange people moved in. And he didn't like that. They weren't the farmers anyway, and just made trouble. So he finally decided to go to America too. Susie was the baby. She was born in February, and then next year in April we left Russia. Then first we packed some things that we took along, bought big baskets, 2 big baskets where we put in our clothes and some dishes that we want to take along. I always wished we had taken more along, because Mom had a few nice dishes, but she gave them away. Then, of course, Mother's parents were still there. 2 sisters were still at home. And Mother's sister, Lena, she died when Henry Nightingale was a baby. And his father had to go and work for the government too. So Grandpa Wadle, they just took Marie and Henry Nightingale along, because other sister Helen, she died before we moved away. Well, we to the front there. We had to walk through a lot of trees and bushes, and it was thick full of leaves. And of course we had paid a man to take us over, and he always went behind us and always said, and we shouldn't make those leaves so loud. Our father carried Florentine in his arms and Mother Susan, and we, the rest of us, we all held hands and walked through that, and it was pitch dark. I don't know that we didn't get scared, but we just walked. And then when we got over, there was I guess it was a big wagon too with horses. And it took us then a while where we got to, where we could take the train. We got into that train and went to Germany. And we got there. And, I think we stayed 3 days there before our ship came. That ship was so big, it couldn't come near the city or near the edge there of Germany. They ordered smaller ships. I think it took 5 or 6 small ships to bring all those people that want to go in the big ship. Well, we went on any ship we went. I think, 14 days to learn that ship. And the first thing that they were a young man, they were all dressed in white, and nurses too, all dressed in white. And if they seen something, first they said, you could see London. Well, so most of the people went to that side of the ship to see London. But of course it was so not light anymore. We could see the lights, but that was about all of London we could see. Well, and the next stop was they couldn't see, and the water was so you couldn't see during the day. It was so hazy or something. So they stopped one night. They thought if another ship would come and run into us, well, then our ship would sink. And every few minutes they blew. Oh, that was terrible loud. Mom always woke up every time that whistle blew. Well, the next morning we could go again. We went, I don't know, about 4 or 5 days. We came to the icebergs. The little ways off. Great big hills and all ice. So, well, everybody wanted to see again that ice, so we again went to one side of the ship, but pretty soon made us go back because they said the ship would fall over on that side. But man, those icebergs, and we stopped again a whole night and whistled. The icebergs, great big pieces, was swimming in the water, and then they locked every door. Nobody could get out of their rooms because they said if the ship would come close to the ice, the ice close to the ship, then maybe just one room would run full of water, not all the rooms. I think we will stay there about day and the night, and then we went on. And don't know how many days, but then we came to America. We didn't come to New York where the others did. In Baltimore, Maryland, that's where we came to. And they made a bridge from the ship to that building there where we were supposed to go in. So we went in there. It was May already, and it was so hot there, and we weren't used to that heat. In Russia, at 3 in the afternoon, it was so cool. We had to find something to put on because we got cold. And here the sun was so low, we thought, and so hot. Dad said, let's go back. Well, the next day we got everything ready, and then we took a train and we went. I don't know all the states, but I remember one state, I think, was it Arkansas or what? And we see nothing but onion plants on both sides of the train. They planted onions. They were about this tall already. And we sat up the window and looked at. And then we went through hills. It was pitch dark. And did Florentine and Susie cry. It was too dark. It took quite a while to get through those dark hills. Well, we finally got to Hillsborough. And then already in Kansas City, we met a woman. She said, there are three Kansas cities here in America. Well, they said that they weren't all three in one city. But yeah, she said, here is Kansas City, Missouri, and now we will go to Kansas City, Kansas, and then we'll go to Hillsborough, Kansas. And that's Kansas City too, so we have 3 Kansas Cities to go to. And Dad tried to explain it to her. So when we came to Kansas City, there was our Uncle Bernard, Dad's brother. Of course, Dad didn't know him, we didn't know him, but when we got into the train, Caroline, she always liked to talk to everybody. And she looked around me, she said, there's a man with a beard and he is looking at us. He even smiled at me, she said. Well, and I looked too, and he smiled. You know, we wondered who he was or what he wanted. Well, when we got out then in Hillsborough, out of the train, he came there too, where we went. And out once he went and told Dad who he was. And they kissed each other and they cried. And then he said he had the car there. He'd take us to his place. So we were a few days at the Bernard's house. That was in the country someplace. And we came there on May 29 to Hillsborough. And that day before, all the corn was frozen down. You know, it was May 29, but Uncle Bernard's corn was frozen down too. The new plants all were gone. So his wife was Marie. He said, Marie, you make each one an apron and I'll put corn in there and then we'll all go. Uncle Bernard's had, 6, 7 children too that could plant corn already. And some of us went with the apron, planted corn. Well, then in a few days, then Dad was going to look to rent a farm. And all at once this Mr. John Dirksen came there to Uncle Bernard's and said he had an empty place we could rent it. So we moved in there. Of course, Dad had some money brought along. He didn't use it all for the trip. He bought a cow, he bought 2 horses, and also bought some furniture. And some people brought us some clothes, but we thought they looked so funny. They were so different. We had long, almost reached the ground, long clothes, dresses. And here they were so short. Mom said, that's a shame to go with such short dresses. And then Dad, we moved there in July, and of course the Dirksens had plowed already to sow wheat in October. So he always walked to Uncle Bernard's. That was 2 miles. He came home for the night, and then he helped Uncle Bernard with his planting and whatever he did there. And he came home. And then sometimes it had been so hot, he got such a terrible headache. He couldn't sleep all night. He walked around outside. And he'd say, why didn't we stay in Russia? There it would have been so cool. I never had a headache there. Well, and we all cried, and he had such a bad headache. Couldn't sleep at night. Well, it finally got some better, that it wasn't so bad anymore, but he didn't like it too well. It was just too hot. But then next year he planted, he already plowed and planted some wheat, and afterwards some corn. And when the corn was ready to bring home, then we also took the leaves home. We didn't have a mattress, and we put Mother sewed a big mattress cover and put it full of those corn leaves, and that's where we slept on. Oh, that was so good to sleep. You want some more? Well, when we were on the ship, my sister Caroline, and she always went where Dad went, and those 2 we didn't see very often. They went upstairs. They're from New York. All the rich people were there. They danced there. They drank there. They had good times up there. Then the next was in the ship were people like us, and had their rooms. And then lower, in the basement, there were the Jews. And we all had to go and get food, meals. We had little baskets with all kinds of things in there to put food in there. And Grandpa Wedel and Grandma Wedel and Elizabeth and Agnes, they were sick. They were so seasick. They couldn't get up. But they had to get up every blessed morning, and if they could walk while we always called them the white man, they carried them up. And then they put them outside. They ran some water, and they stayed there on a chair, sat on a chair, or they sat on the floor till they had cleaned the rooms inside. You know, the ocean water is so terrible salty. They had big rooms there where the salt gathered. And they had to clean that out. So that's why we had to go outside every morning. And Caroline and I, we had to also first get Elizabeth's and Aunt Agnes's meal. And of course, Caroline, she got Grandpa and Grandma really sweet. Now, my father and mother, they never got seasick. We didn't either. We thought that was funny that they got so seasick. But there was other older people that got seasick, but they were all carried out. They had to carry her up the steps. And one time we got acquainted with a Jewish girl. You know, we could not just talk much Jewish, but since the Jews always came while we were in Russia with all kind of things to sell, we had learned some Jewish. We talked to this girl, and then we told her to get her bucket and we'd get our dinner. So she did. And then Caroline went first to fill her bucket, and then this Jewish girl went. And that man there that dipped out the food, he looked at her. "You are a Jew. Get out of here. And right quick." She had to run and go to her room down the basement. If everybody else had eaten, then the Jews could come and eat. Because they didn't like Jews. And so we didn't even see her anymore after that. But we got good food there. We got a lot of, it was something like this applesauce. And then we got little loaves of bread, white bread, and that applesauce over. We thought that was so good. And then Elizabeth and Agnes, they just ate half of theirs because they couldn't keep food. So when we got their bucket, they wanted us to eat theirs, and we told them, no, we wouldn't eat the one they ate from, then we'd get sick too. Well, then we finally got to Dr. Monero, okay. Well, I'll tell you now how it looked in Russia. Well, it was cold, but never wind when it snowed. It started in November to snow November and December. We even couldn't go to church on Christmas because the snow was so deep. But then when spring came, then it would melt. And the Russian people went to work with the horse, and one horse would break through the ice, and the next would stay on the ice, and they screamed they should go, and it was just impossible to go in that ice, or that snow, rather. But it finally, after Christmas a while, you know, that snow there was no wind. It got so strong that we could walk on there, and they even drove with a great big wagon and 2 horses on the hard snow. And of course, when it started to melt, then it was better stay home. And then the storks, well, most of them had the straw on the top of the house, and they built their nests. And then they sometimes they always went already and got little frogs and close by was a big patch where we raised our hay for the winter. Of course, it wasn't ready yet, but there was still snow water from all that snow. And they went and got some little frogs for their babies. And sometimes they dropped them, just they fell down from the roof. And sometimes they even fell and we walked out on our head. Did we scream then? So what kind of crops we had? Rye. They sowed rye. They sowed some kind of a feed where they made the little food, cream of wheat. It was a very fine kernel. Called it cream of wheat. They still have it here too. And then we planted potatoes. And we planted garden. And since the ground was so soft and so new yet, it sure we got a lot of potatoes for all the winter. And pumpkins, and carrots, beets. We had a big place also in not where the horses were, but just beside them, all alone. That's where we kept the vegetables for the winter. And especially the pumpkins, they got very big. And then I had to help already to cut them in little pieces, and we fed them the milk cows. That was my job, and I was small yet. I even couldn't carry when they were so big. And we also ate a lot of those. Mother made so many things of those pumpkins. She fried them, she baked them, and all kinds of things she made from pumpkins. And we had all the animals. We had, so to say, day and night in the barn, except in summer. Some boys would come and pick up all the cattle and take them out to quite a ways away to graze there. Then towards evening they brought them home. Put them in the barn, and there they were till the next month. Of course, the winter they were in the barn all day and all night. Well, we had 2 horses, we had several cows, and to me the funny thing was when a cow was fresh, the first milk, we always we throw that away. And there Mother would take little cups or whatever she had, and she'd bring each neighbor some of that stuff to make pancakes with. Everybody liked those pancakes. And the house, some houses were made of stone or something, but our house was already wood, and of course it had a straw roof. And the gypsies, they came around quite often and begged for things, especially chickens. Well, we always had our chickens in the barn too, not where the cows or horses were or pigs. each one had a little place where they could stay by themselves. And those gypsies, they were kind of dark people, and they had such a funny language. You didn't understand them. Mother always just would say in Low German, "Goat, goat, goat, goat." We should go. Then I told you already how come they left Russia. How come your uncles became aldermen? Well, when they came here to America, Dad's parents and brothers and sisters, it seemed like nobody else cared for them. But just the aldermen, they came and talked to them, and then they joined them and became members of the aldermen. That's why there are so many now. Like most of Dad's brothers and sisters are aldermen. And I don't keep it that way. I like it. And I like aldermen too. I always tell Velma to become a alderman, but she doesn't want it. Yeah, there were Mennonites. It wasn't very many villages, but they got rich and they bought always more land, and the poor people had to leave. And then too, so many people came in and bought the buildings, and they almost made the people go. Some even had no place to stay. They sold their farm and weren't quite ready yet to go to America. Then they had to go someplace in the barn or wait till they got their papers so they could go. They were some kind of German people. They just came and they talked you into it till they could buy the place. And of course that they didn't like either, That's why so many left there, and so many new ones came in and bought those farms. So pretty soon there wasn't much left of Mennonites. Of course, the big Mennonite villages there were filled up too, and I always bought more